Hey there! It's not often I get to use the term game changer unironically. Usually it's appended to some kind of marketing mumbo-jumbo for a very middle-of-the-road product that largely does the same things that products like it have done for years. In this case, however, if Fanatec met their mark, the CSL DD is set to potentially revolutionize sim racing in much the same way that the advent of direct drive did before it. This is because it's taking direct drive technology and bringing it down into the mid-range of the market, making it more accessible to all sim racers. To those who are unaware, the CSL DD is the cheapest direct drive wheelbase ever announced. And we just so happen to have a review sample right behind us, which we'll be testing over the course of this video. We'll begin by unboxing the unit, then listing off the tech specs before taking it for a slew of driving tests to find out whether Fanatec did actually hit their mark. Following this, I'll of course be testing the CSL pedals made specifically to be paired with the CSL DD in a following video, so make sure you're subscribed to not miss that. So without further ado, because I'm completely excited and just want to get straight to it, let's check out and unbox this potentially revolutionary bit of kit. Here we are, one CSL DD coming right up. As we open up the shipping box, we're greeted with a carton, not really containing anything by the looks of things. Just a bit of protection on the top of the box. And as we take the box out, we see fairly standard Fanatec-esque packaging. A nice white box with the CSL DD printed on the front. Hash the new Stan DD. Very nice, guys. A little bit of damage there on the corner in transit, but nothing catastrophic. And we'll see how it looks once we unbox it. It's a fairly standard packaging from Fanatec. You got the handle up at the top. Got the three little lips there that lock it into place. And as we ever so gingerly swing it open to see what's inside, got the manual in a bunch of different languages, and the standard array of Fanatec stickers that they hand out with just about every product that you order. Free promo is good promo. And it looks like the unit itself is fairly snugly packaged in amongst some foam. We very easily take out the foam, nice thick cut there to protect the unit. Not quite as gingerly packaged as the DD1 or the Podium series, but still more than adequate enough to actually get the unit to use safely. We've got a nice small white box there containing the mounting accessories and the USB cable. I know I'm teasing this out interminably, but you know, this is the big reveal. We've got to wait for it. We've got to wait for the CSL DD, and here it comes, finally wrapped up in plastic. It keeps slipping out of my hands as I try and take it out of the box, and here it is. The quote-unquote future of affordable direct drive sim racing. Ta-da! The CSL DD in the flesh. It's a really nice, kind of cute looking bit of kit. It really is like half of a DD1. I like the rails on the sides as well. It makes it look a little bit more industrial. They're of course there for pragmatic reasons, so you can mount the unit as you need to, but it's really kind of cute, isn't it? If this is what we'll be seeing in more mid-range setups, I certainly won't complain. Very sleek, understated bit of kit. As you can see, the power button is right on the front there this time. Very no BS, very stripped down, just the pure basics of what you need to get direct drive force feedback straight to you. And moving it along, of course, this is the optional boost kit. We'll be talking more about the boost kit and what it means and what it does and how it feels in the actual driving tests and the conclusion after the fact. But for now, here's how it's packaged. It's got its own little white box. As you can see, the boost kit largely just consists of another power supply unit and a bunch of different plugs for different outlets for different regions in the world, as I show you the European one that's completely useless to me here in Australia. And what I assume is the North American one following it. And that's it, the CSL DD and additional optional boost kit unboxed. Now let's mount up the unit, take a look at it and talk about its tech specs before taking it for some driving tests to see how good this thing actually is. Here we are in front of our baby little direct drive. It's kind of cute, honestly, I won't lie. Compared to the larger belt-driven bases in this price range traditionally, it's really cute. Compared to the DD1 as well. It's just like half a DD1. It was a really great April Fool's joke that Fanatec pulled, by the way, there. For those who know what I'm talking about, I'll flash it on the screen quickly. But yes, this is the CSL DD. So let's talk about some of the, talking points about it. The first thing is, once again to reiterate, this, at the time of recording, is set to be by far the cheapest direct drive wheelbase on the entire market. The entry-level 5Nm version is €349. I'll flash up some of the other prices in different regions as well. It is upgradable to an 8Nm version with the boost kit, aka just a larger PSU, which unlocks the true potential of the unit. So one of the things that we'll be talking about towards the end of this video is the difference between the 8Nm and the 5Nm operation. However, the vast majority of the driving tests in this video are going to be taking place with the full 8Nm version, because from everything I can see, that was the pure whiteboard design, the actual intention behind this product before they scaled it down for market segmentation reasons. The other things worth noting about the CSL DD, unlike the DD1 and the DD2, it's actually passively cooled. There's no fan in here that's going to fire up and annoy you, so you can leave that job to your computer and your very loud GPU. And it's also upgradable with their upcoming Quick Release 2 system. For now, it's just got the standard Fanatec Quick Release. Now, no screw on here to bring it back, so to any DD1, DD2 users, you'd be quite familiar with the screw that you have to bring back to kind of compress the rubber. That doesn't actually exist anymore, so you just kind of bolt this on. And I've actually got the fastening screw on here as well, just to stop the wheel rattling around, because as we know, the quick release currently isn't the best part of the Fanatec ecosystem, and I'm very keen to see them upgraded to the QR2, which this will be fully compatible with. This wheelbase also acts as a hub, able to connect 2 Fanatec shifters, 1 handbrake, and 1 set of pedals. Along with that, you'll notice that it has this interesting novel rail system. So what you get with the CSL DD is a set of T-nuts. They slot into these rails here and you can adjust them to your heart's content, or basically to the point where you need to adjust them in order to mount them to whatever mounting solution that you have on your end. While it's a very flexible design, and I commend Fanatec for the fairly ingenious and elegant nature of setting it up, it does tend to be a little bit flimsy and a little bit annoying when you're actually bolting it. One last thing I would be beside myself not to mention, when you're removing the sticker that comes over the metallic shaft when you first unbox the unit, don't do what I did and just go to rip it off. Do it slowly, otherwise you might run into this. Now, while the standard unit will be retailing somewhere around $349 EUR and the boost kit version with 8 Nm of torque will be somewhere around about the €499 mark, it's worth saying that if you get both together as part of the boost kit bundle, you will be getting a saving of $19.95 EUR, or as the pricing might vary in your specific region. It's very clear that Fanatec are trying to entice people to get the full 8 Nm version for obvious reasons. I think there's a pretty decent margin to be had for selling a power supply unit for €150. With that being said, we're going to find out whether it's actually going to be worth that investment for you, whether that 5 to 8 Nm shift is really all that much of a difference. But first of all, we're going to try the unit out fully fledged, fully unleashed. Let's say hypothetically you buy it with the full boost kit and you bolt it to a high-end sim rig that's quite flexless. Let's see what it drives like compared to the DD1. I've of course been a DD1 user for over a year now, so I know it implicitly well, especially in titles such as ACC, AC, BeamNG, R-Factor, I mean, take your pick really. I've been driving with it for many hours over the last year. It's also worth noting for $29.95 EUR, they will offer you a table clamp kit for this. I would say that if you're going to use the base 5 Nm version, the clamp kit may be a viable option for you, but if you're going to be using the full boost kit with 8 Nm of torque, you probably want to bolt it to something more rigid than your desk. I say this as somebody that cares about your belongings and doesn't want to see your precious office desk get dented. Anyhow, enough waffling on about the CSL DD. That is the base feature set. There's of course a bunch of marketing mumbo-jumbo such as the patented flux barrier technology amongst other things, but we've really highlighted the main points. And the rest we're going to find out through very stringent driving tests, so let's just get stuck into them and see what this puppy can do. So we begin in ACC. I think ACC is the perfect first test for the CSL DD for one main reason. Namely, the one complaint that overhangs ACC from people on lower or mid-range hardware is that you don't get enough lower forces and you don't get enough detail from its force feedback engine. This tends to be a far cry from what the direct drive users say, saying that you get plenty of forces, it's all in pretty reasonable proportion, and overall that ACC actually has a fairly decent force feedback engine. So for a unit that's a direct drive wheelbase, aiming to go down and basically supplant the entire mid-range market, I can't think of a better test than ACC. I mean, does it give you the sensation at a way lower price bracket that the higher end users are getting? It's pretty much the litmus test for the CSL DD, so let's try it out. One thing I can say before we even start driving is that the moment I put the wheel onto this thing and started rotating it around, I could tell that it felt smoother. There's less cogging than the DD1. Now this could mean anything, maybe when the force feedback kicks in it won't matter, but I've got to say that the simple action of just rotating the wheel is actually better than the DD1. So let's go on from there. We're of course here at the ever-famous Spa-Francorchamps in McLaren 720S. Oh, cool, all good. Thought my pedals were malfunctioning. But yes, the reason I'm here is because there's a lot of nice straights where I can talk to you about how the unit feels, followed by a lot of high compression, high downforce corner complexes like Radeon and Eau Rouge. We can really feel it load up. So let's see what we're in store for. I'm excited. Oh, slightly overshot, little sauce, but it's all good. All right, that's interesting. Coming from being a DD1 user for, over a year now, it feels quite different. It actually feels like a completely different wheelbase. It doesn't feel like it's coming from the heritage of the DD1. And you might ask, do you mean that in a good sense or in a bad sense? And allow me to not beat around the bush here. I'm just going to say it. This is better than the DD1. In case you thought you misheard me there, let me just navigate this complex and tell you that again. Alright, this CSL DD, for most practical purposes, is better than my DD1. So obviously it doesn't deliver nearly as much force overall, but if you mostly care about detail and smoothness, it's got it beat hands down. And that's an insane proposition from Fanatec, because if you've ever used the DD1, you'd know now that not only is the CSL DD blowing away all of its competition in the mid-range and explains why Fanatec pulled the CSL Elite and the CSW, but they've basically sabotaged their own high-end. Whoa. So one thing you're probably noticing is that my driving here is effortless. Look at that. This is ACC. One of the most, or rather one of the least informative force feedback systems for most low-end to mid-range wheels. And here I am on a mid-range wheel just hammering it. It's insane what they, like, there is no competition against this thing in the mid-range. None of the other competitors have anything against this. Not only that, it's actually better in most senses than Fanatec's high-end offerings too. Which is just, it's such an insane proposition, it's hard to even conceive of. You know, the moment I first tried this and I felt the smoothness and the lack of cogging and did my first lap, I contacted the guys at Fanatec and I'm like, guys, am I insane? Am I going crazy or is this thing smoother than the DD1? Because I actually prefer it. And the answer was, the new motor is really good, Erman. You know, the tech has come a long way. So this new in-runner style motor compared to the outrunner seems to be a superior technology for direct drive, direct-driven wheelbases for sim racing. This purpose-built motor that Fanatec have designed is helping me even with my terrible driving. But the sensation of driving an ACC compared to my DD1, it's just more effortless. It's actually better than the DD1. It's so crazy. I feel like I can't say this enough because I feel like people just it just won't process? Because it's still not processing for me. It's been a day of me driving with this thing now, and I'm still trying to understand what it is that I'm feeling. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't get everything. At 8 Newton meters, it's just shy of where I want it to be. If it were 10, maybe 12 Newton meters, this would be a perfect wheelbase for me. I would feel nothing missing from this. But as it stands, when the damping forces load up at speeds here, especially at Spa, I feel something missing. It's not fighting my arms as much as I'm used to with the DD1, but it's a small sacrifice. It's such a small sacrifice compared to what you actually get out of it. It's hard to know what else to say. I mean, this was the litmus test. It's ACC. This is currently one of the most popular sim racing titles on the market, if not the most popular for competitive racing, at least in terms of realistic sim racing. Stands, of course, iRacing. And this is the one that most people struggle with in terms of their lower end gear. And here it is. Fanatec have bridged the gap. They've done it. You can see why there's Fanatec podium ads all over the game now. I mean, it just works. It just makes sense. As you can see, it's just... Compared to my DD1, it's effortless. I'm doing the micro corrections mid-corner. In ACC, I used to completely suck at doing that. Anyhow, that's the CSL DD and the crowd favorite Assetto Corsa Competizione. Now we're here in the lesser played RaceRoom. RaceRoom recently had a complete overhaul to its force feedback engine, writing it from the ground up using physically based forces. The net effect is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 force feedback engines in all of sim racing. Now, while this force feedback engine has translated quite well to the higher end direct-driven wheelbases, it hasn't really translated all that well to the lower end gear and belt-driven ones. And because the CSL DD is here to supplant the entire mid-range ecosystem, well, what better title to test it out on? Very similar to ACC in that regard. That said, of course, we're here in the gorgeous Grello Manti Racing Porsche at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This is... Anybody that knows me knows that this is about as home as it gets for me, so I can't wait to try this out. Heavy traffic day here at the Nürburgring, 24-hour layout of course, with a ton of contestants on it. We have somewhere in the range of about 46 different cars, all vying for their own space on the track, so hopefully we can carve something out once we get going on the GP circuit here. Ah, there we go. And there's our first talking point for the CSL DD. One of the first criticisms that lower end wheelbase users have against the new algorithm is, well, I can't feel the car step out on me. Well, it turns out now you can. That's no longer an excuse. It's very easy to keep the car exactly where you want it with the CSL DD. Difference between the DD1? Well, I've had to dial it a little bit differently to the DD1 in the force feedback options. Whereas the DD1 you can basically just unleash with everything maxed out at 100, maximum dynamic range, and tailoring the linearity to suit you on the wheelbase. With... yes, already emulating Kevin Estra here. With the CSL DD, you have to actually dial in some linearity in the force feedback controls. The reason for that is the mid-corner sensation is a little bit anemic otherwise. It's just not kind of heavy enough. It just feels a little bit too light and flimsy. So on a high downforce section like this, where the front really loads up, tons of air rushing over that or under that front splitter, I would be used to kind of fighting the DD1. I'd be having to fight the wheel in order to turn it, whereas on the CSL DD, it's a little bit of a different story. So I loop back around the GP circuit, try and actually get a lap that we measure. I don't get in front of anyone there. Nice AMG GT3 there. So you definitely feel the lack of overall torque in the space in RaceRoom. You definitely have to make some compromises for it. You'll notice as I'm going through some of the higher downforce, higher compression sections, we're going to get very close to clipping, if not actually start clipping. On sections where you traditionally wouldn't really want any clipping, you would want the dynamic range retained. So that's just one of the prices that you pay for a lower torque unit, unfortunately. That said, is it a price I'm glad to pay for the increase in fidelity over the DD1? Yeah, no doubt about it. Absolute no-brainer. Now we're of course racing the AI set to 115 out of 120, fairly high by RaceRoom standards, so you're going to see the AI do some things that are slightly outside the realm of physical possibility for the player, so it'll be interesting to witness here. Also the difference of rear engine versus front engine, two very different chassis layouts. Of course, where the Porsche excels is just rotation, even though I probably have the most understeery Porsche in all of sim racing currently. Not sure what it is about this thing, I just can't get it rotating. Anyway, that said, we're on my favorite racetrack of all time, the Nürburgring Nordschleife, catching a massive slip there around the Sabine Schmitz curve. It's not going to be the glorious lap of the gods I'd hoped for, but let's see if we can make up this half second somewhere. As we run into pretty heavy traffic and almost lose the car. Yes! Well, you know, what better litmus test of the DD or CSL DD do you want than that? I basically drifted my way through all of Hutzenbach and somehow made up time. How does that even work? How is that even possible? As I lost the time there, of course. Thank you, Carrera. Much appreciated. So, CSL DD, what do you say? I mean, you're capable of pretty much top tier driving with this thing. Certainly far higher tier than I'm capable of. But, you know, as much as I feel it on these high downforce sections, I want it to give me a little bit more resistance. But that resistance is going to come at the expense of more clipping. So I can turn it up. I can turn up the per car multiplier. But as you can see, I got a clip there. So every clip is detail lost. So that's just part of the trade-off that you have to make for the CSL DD. But in this price range, it's not really a trade-off. I mean, there's nothing here that competes with this. There's no Thrustmaster unit. There's no old Fanatec belt-driven unit. Nothing is even close to this. I mean, this is better than the DD1. Again, you've got to wonder what Fanatec were thinking, like trying to sabotage. They're working so hard to sabotage everyone's mid-range ecosystem that they sabotage their own high-end ecosystem. Crazy. Alright, let's see if we can navigate this traffic before it gets too bad. Oh no, not here. That's cost me. Well, I guess that's part of the fun, trying to navigate traffic on the Nordschleife on a qualifying lap. So effortless. And one of the big talking points of the marketing for the CSL DD is feel subtle sidewall flex. And, you know, interestingly enough, in RaceRoom, that's something you can feel quite obviously. When you've got the car loaded up in a high compression corner, you can feel the outside tires, you can feel the contact patch expanding, you can feel them loading. It's a very progressive thing, and it's because it's a very progressive wheelbase. There's no grain, there's no noise on the lower end to take away the sensation. Every force that you get through it is a necessary sensation that you're getting from the physics engine of the game, helping you drive the car. As I continue to drive the most understeery Porsche in all of sim racing. But what else to say? Even here as I load up, we're getting close now, we're really loading up those tires. Don't do it. Oh, alright, Kevin Estra on deck. You can see quite a large clip there, so you are losing quite a bit of the dynamic range. You are making a fairly substantial sacrifice here in RaceRoom for this detail. Now, would I go back to the DD1 in spite of that? Probably not. I think when it comes to it, this is the kind of... I mean, the CSL DD has the elements that are going to get me driving faster. The Fanatec DD1 is going to get me the elements that are going to make me feel more engaged, like I'm in a car really battling the thing. But I think if I'm actually there to try to, you know, race competently, but don't pay attention to this, if I'm there to try and race competently, it's the CSL DD that I'd be opting for. As you can see, really being slowed down by this traffic, but I mean, it's really giving you an idea of what this thing is capable of, isn't it? I'm just negotiating this traffic like it's second nature, and sure, it is probably my most comfortable racetrack in the world, but at the same time, the wheelbase is just helping me feel glued in with the car. I mean, I feel at one with this thing. Sorry, I'm kind of in awe at how slow some of these cars negotiate that complex. Of course, in Sector 3, my favorite section in all of racing, in all of motorsport. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You just feel what you need to and that's it. Whereas I could have quite easily driven in Automobilista 2 or R-Factor 2 and man, that would have been like a party in the hands. It'd be like, oh wow, I can feel every bump, I can feel every little micro, everything that's happening, but I mean, realistically, they overplay what happens. In a real car, you're not getting that much detail through the steering column. And that's where... Oh no. Sure, why not? Kevin Astor on deck. That's where ACC and RaceRoom really become the litmus test, because they're just giving you the necessary forces. And if they're enough for you to drive, if you don't need anything canned in there, then, I mean, you're doing pretty good with your wheelbase, aren't you? I've got to say, it pairs so well with the McLaren GT3 rim. If you're looking at the CSL DD, you'd probably want to be looking at the GT3 rim V2 as well. It's quite a bit of kit. They're made for each other. If you're still watching, I'll put a card up above to my review of the McLaren rim on the DD1 base. And of course, our next driving test is going to be something quite different. H-pattern manual, 3 pedals, clutch, heel and toe, with an oval rim, so the self-aligning torque forces are really going to factor in. We're going to let the car self-align. We're going to do a few slips on the rear end, a few El Driftos, see how quick and snappy the base is when it comes to that kind of driving, because arguably that's probably the more important thing to try and work out. We've just been dealing with but all the same, it's passed with absolutely flying colors, hasn't it? As we get across the finish line for the CSL DD test in RaceRoom. BeamNG, you knew this was coming. It's one of my favorite sims, so of course we're here in a classic bombed out muscle car, minus the muscle part, on some out-of-the-way backroads track that it has no business being on. So if we're ever going to test the self-aligning torque forces, it's going to be right here, right now. Let's do it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the H-pattern shifter working. It just won't bind the correct gears to the right positions. Could just be an internal bug on the driver. I'm sure they'll sort that out before release. So we're stuck in sequential mode for the time being, and whoa, that's snappy. That is so quick to realign. You know, of all the driving tests I've done so far today, I think there's probably the most stark difference between the DD1. Because the DD1 in BeamNG has never quite been 100%, no matter how I've dialed it. It always feels like it's either too loose in the center and not damped enough, and then the big forces will come in and try and tear your arm off. There's no in between. Whereas with this, it's just really good. Have to excuse the slow driving. This is not a performance vehicle. This is actually close to as fast as you can drive it here, believe it or not. There we go. But you know, this is what we wanted. Because this is going in such slow motion, it's giving me such a great platform to feel all the various different forces, all the crazy stuff happening underneath the hood in the BeamNG physics engine, of which there's so much. Every compression, you can feel the suspension contorting, you can feel the tires flexing, you can feel everything moving, including the panels of the car. It's one of the amazing things about BeamNG. It is an absolute masterclass in physics modeling. It's so far ahead in some ways than all the other sims that it's just, it has to be driven to be believed. And the CSL DD allows you to actually experience it in full glory. It's actually better than the DD1. Just, I'm still amazed by. Come on, come on, come on, turn, turn, turn. Pretend you're a car. Pretend you have traction in those tiny, tiny little wagon wheel tires. All right, doing my best here. Ladies and gents, I am trying. Definitely trying. Wow, what a car. Definitely feels like you're going in slow motion, but it's helping me drive. It is just, even though this car does not belong anywhere near this track. All right, see if I can survive this time. Come on, turn, baby. Turn. Oh, that is not... Woo! I don't feel that blanket of security that you feel in a GT3 car, you know? Somehow. Believe it or not. Come on, stay on the road. Or bridge. Really, wherever the hell I am right now. Oh, it's so quick. It's so much it's quicker than the DD1, I'm pretty sure. It's so quick to snap back and respond. I mean, drifting is like, you know, let's say hypothetically I owned a BMW M2 in the real world, and let's say that hypothetically I may have drifted it here or there. Let's say that hypothetically it would have felt very similar to this. Hypothetically. Oh, BeamNG, this is the sense of weight transfer, the contortion of weight, just the overall sensation of driving is something completely different, and feeling that pothole as well. Who needs laser scan tracks when you have this level of physics modeling as I just jump all over the place? But this is more than I expected. Of all the tests that we've done here, wow. Of all the tests that we've done, this has probably brought the most joy to me. And I mean, that's the running motif with BeamNG, isn't it? It just brings joy to people. But to actually feel it come alive on such a greater level. Okay, here we go. Coming up to possibly the most brutal part of the stage on the car itself. No, just survive. Surviving is the name of the game. It's half the battle, and with no traction and all rear-wheel drive. Oh wow, okay, all pan. Let's see if we can make it before we run out. All right, nice and slow here. There's a crazy hairpin. Oh no, I tried the handbrake turn. It didn't work. It's not the kind of thing that you want to be doing in a car like this. It's just really, you're pushing your luck even just trying to get it to the finish line. Okay, here we go. We've almost done it. Oh. Look at that, you just let it go and it does its own thing. I can't imagine this would be anything less than stellar for drift driving. So, do let me know how you go. I had an absolute blast. Brilliant. For the 5 Nm versus 8 Nm boost kit version, I figured the best way to get the difference would be to simply run the same scenarios back to back. So everything we've driven thus far has been with the 8 Nm boost kit. Now we're stripping it back to what the CSL DD comes with its base price of €349.95. So that's just a 5 Nm version with a smaller power supply. So this is quite literally my first time trying this out. I've never driven through this before, so these are my raw and uncut first impressions compared to the 8 Nm which I've been driving with for the last 2 days. So here we go. Okay, so far so good. You're getting a reasonable amount of low detail. Engine's already damaged, which is great. Okay, definitely. Alright, I mean, it's still very snappy. It's still very fast, but I can already tell I want to turn up the forces. Like, to hell with the clipping, I want more resistance, because it's it's super easy to turn. I would imagine some of the faster aliens out there would actually enjoy this, because it's actually super easy to drive with this lack of resistance against your hand, but really, you're not getting the magic of the direct drive this way. You can definitely tell that 8 Nm was the spec that it was developed for, and they cut it down for this version. There's nothing wrong with it inherently, it's just it doesn't really give you much of a driving sensation. Still very snappy, but it's kind of lacking everything. I'm not even getting the detail so much anymore. All I can think about is turning up the strength and just clipping the crap out of everything. As you can tell, it does make driving supremely easy, so if this is an entry-level unit for you, if this is your foray away from, let's say, something gear-driven like a Logitech G920, I mean, this is going to be amazing for you. You're going to feel so much more detail and so much more force, but when you get it closer to 8 Nm, it actually starts to feel more like what an actual car feels like. So that's the difference that you're dealing between. So it really depends on the individual, where you are with your budget, what you expect from sim racing. I would say that if you can afford the boost kit, it's the no-brainer option for this. It kind of unlocks the unit to perform at the spec that it was probably intended to. Whereas like this, it's just a little bit more neutered. There's a bit less going on. But as you can tell, I'm still driving perfectly fine. In fact, I'm probably driving even easier because there's less stuff fighting against me. Which is a whole nother philosophical can of worms, you know? That story of the aliens that used to just drive with virtually no force feedback because it can be quicker. So it really depends where you lie. If you're a budget alien, maybe the standard 5 Newton mode will work for you. It's definitely very easy, you're not fighting against me at all, but at the same time not very inspiring either. It just doesn't really give you that sensation of actually driving a car so much. It feels more like a controller again. And what I'm amazed by is like how much of that direct drive feeling goes away when the torque is dropped by just 3 newtons. It's kind of impressive. I wasn't expecting it to be this drastic, but it is. Rear drive shaft broken. That's the end of our race. But you can tell that Fanatec were very crafty about the way that they thought about this, about the way they segmented this up. It's a very natural upgrade path to go for the 8 Newton meters. It definitely puts the wheelbase in a much more natural spot, so I can see why they did this. It's enough to give you a taste of direct drive, but not enough to really fulfill that craving that you develop. So I would say for me, definitely a little too underpowered for any kind of long-term use. But if you're coming from a Logitech ecosystem, then this would still be an upgrade for you. And working our way backwards for a lap of Spa again. Let's try it out with 5 Newton meters of torque this time. Here we go. Ooh, spicy. All right. I've turned this up to 100, both in the game and on the base, so full. These are max forces across both, and I can already tell you going through the bus stop, it's just not enough. It's just not enough. It's not giving you enough resistance to really correct your driving. It's just barely enough to drive with. You're getting a decent amount of the lower details. You can turn them up. You can actually use linearity mode on the base to bring those up. But there's just not enough of the heavier forces. Like right now, I'm just going through Eau Rouge. There's nothing. It feels really limp. It feels really, really just anemic. You don't really get the magic of the direct drive, and I wanted to be more positive about the standard base 5 Newton meter mode, but it's very obvious that this base is intended to be used with the boost kit. If you're going to buy this, you probably want to buy it with the boost kit. It's sort of a part and parcel kind of a deal. It's difficult for me to even drive like this because it's so flimsy. I can just push the car way past the point I should be able to. It kind of lacks that damped weightiness that I associate with ACC. It's just kind of surreal. I'm sure after a few laps I would adjust to it and would be absolutely fine. I'm sure I could get perfectly fine lap times with it. It feels so flimsy to me. As you can see, I'm oversteering the car as a result of it. And this is with 100 and 100, so I'm clipping the crap out of the force feedback. If you keep an eye on that bar, actually no, you can't see that bar because of my my fat noggin here in the corner, but I can assure you that there's a lot of clipping going on. So coming up to the last sector of Spa, one thing that is super easy with this is that you can really just kind of get into full scrub mode. Not that it helps you in ACC, of course, but you can really just kind of just yeet the car out, for better or worse, usually for worse. So, you know, it is what it is. Maybe if you're more of a casual gamer, you're into the F1 2021, things like that, it might be doing it for you, but I would say if you consider yourself or fancy yourself a more thoroughbred sim racer, this probably won't quite be enough for you. I'm actually impressed at how much of a difference those 3 newtons make. It's quite literally a make or break kind of a difference. So, you know, for better or worse, it is what it is. Fanatec are very crafty, they know exactly what they're doing. So, yeah, you definitely feel that 8 Newton meter boost, that's for sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I conclude my Fanatec CSL DD review. You can probably tell that this has been a long filming process as I'm a little bit worse for wear right now and I'm kind of struggling to bring it all together. The last thing I expected to be saying here today is that I actually prefer this baby little direct drive unit to my DD1s. But there you have it, I do. They seem to have improved the motor technology substantially in the years since the Podium series came out. When it comes to the lower and the mid-range forces, this unit simply conveys them far more elegantly and far more cleanly. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't need the arm-tearing forces, the CSL DD is an absolute no-brainer. It seems in Fanatec's search to completely dominate the mid-range of the sim racing market, they've kind of eaten into a chunk of their own high-end, so this leaves them in a very precarious position, but I hope this gamble pays off for them in the end. Now, the discussion between the 8Nm boost kit version and the standard 5Nm. It goes without saying in this case that the original whiteboard design of this unit would have been the 8Nm version. It would have very likely been a marketing decision to cut it back and segment up the product line in order to get more people into the ecosystem and spread things out. It's simply just good business practice. Having driven in both modes, I would strongly recommend if you're going to purchase a CSL DD that you budget for the bundled boost kit as well. It's just the far superior experience. The only exception I would make to this is if perhaps you're somebody coming from the Logitech ecosystem with extremely low-powered wheels, or perhaps you're coming from a controller and this is your first wheelbase ever. In that case, I can see the 5Nm version being quite good for you as a stepping stone into sim racing, as it were. This leaves you with an upgrade path for the 8Nm version should you choose to upgrade and get into the hobby on a more deeper level. It definitely helps unlock more of what I perceive to be the benefits of direct drive. I think at 5Nm, it's getting so close that the forces are so low that it almost doesn't matter that it's more detailed than the belt and the gear-driven wheelbases. So again, if you do have it in your budget, if you are considering this unit, I would strongly recommend getting with the bundled boost kit. Now, in the spirit of being completely transparent, the boost kit is actually just this. It's a power supply brick. It's just a higher wattage one that can deliver more current to the unit and unlock its potential, the potential that would have been the original design before they cut it back to segment the product line. As they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. This is just a subset of capitalism and it's just good business practice. Even with the boost kit being what it is, even if you don't think a power supply brick can be warranted to be charged at €149.95, this unit just has no competition. Even at €500, there's just nothing out there that's going to give you this level of elegant detail. This is completely crushing the mid-range of the market. Fanatec are going to spread direct drive technology throughout the sim racing scene, and the belt drive and the gear drive tech will only be relegated to the super low end very shortly. So with all that being said, you can have your qualms about the way they've segmented up the boost kit versus the standard version, but costs aside, there's still nothing that competes with this thing. Recapping on the behavior of the unit itself, it's smooth, it doesn't cog, there's no low-level grain, it is a tier higher than the Podium series, which again is so very strange to say, but another thing I do want to say is that this, as of now, will become my primary unit. I won't be bolting my DD1 back on here, I'll be continuing to use the CSL DD. That is legitimately how impressed I am by this little thing. From what I can tell, it's extremely efficient, it hasn't gotten warm at all, not from what I can tell, maybe a little bit on the rear there. But the passive cooling system seems to be doing completely fine and diffusing all the heat that the unit generates, which is a bit of a cry from the Fanatec DD1 and the DD2, which do have a fan cooling system. The quick release is also actually a bit easier to use. There's no actual screw that you have to kind of tighten back, no cushion or little rubber thing that you have to compress in order to get the two to lock in. You do, however, need to use the actual fastening bolt in order to stop the units kind of rattling against each other. So until the quick release 2 system gets invented and comes around, this is the best that we have to deal with for now. As we've spoken about before, there's a bunch of rails all along the units for every possible mounting configuration you can conceive of, so it shouldn't be a problem getting it compatible with whatever cockpit you're trying to mount it to, whether it be side mounted, bottom mounted, or anything in between. In a perfect world, I would have loved to have seen this unit put out 10 to 12 Newton meters. That for me wouldn't require anything more. I'd be able to maintain the full dynamic range of the signal, the force feedback signal coming out of the computer as I would want it, without compromising anything to get the weightiness and the damping forces that I want. As it stands, the CSL DD is about 90% there. Just that extra 10% and it would essentially be looking at a perfect wheelbase as far as I'm concerned. There's a bunch of accessories you can look at, including an added table clamp or whatever you're attempting to do. Again, if you're looking to table clamp it, I would say keep it to the 5 Newton meter spec. 8 might be a little much unless you really hate your desk and you want to see it in splinters. And of course, once again, I can't stress this enough, if you're really looking to get the most out of the CSL DD and get the experience that I got here today, buy it with the bundled boost kit. You'll get $19.95 off, euros anyway. Check your regional pricing to see how it differs for you, but I would strongly recommend that bundle. As always, I have links to the product page of this unit in all regions down below, so make sure to check that out. And if you're going to buy one, please do consider using those links as they do help support this channel. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed this review as much as I enjoyed making it. I can't believe I have a new primary wheelbase. That's not what I was expecting to find here today, but I sincerely hope that if you do purchase one that you enjoyed every bit as much as I enjoy mine. Make sure to subscribe to catch our upcoming video for the CSL pedals made specifically to complement the CSL DD. And until then, I'll see you guys later.